Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and I have Danny with me today, and we're going to be talking about the idea of employer branding. But before we get into what that term means and all the questions that I have for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yep. Hello, everybody. I'm Danny Jimenez. I have been a digital marketing expert for the better half of 500 years. And while I've been doing that, I've been slowly innovating with different insurance agencies, different companies, tech companies, getting them to focus on employer branding as part of their corporate branding. So I'm super happy to be here with you today so we can talk about the necessities of employee branding coming into the insurance industry and how it's super needed right now.
Danny, I didn't know you were a vampire and you'd been doing this for 500 years.
Yeah, but just use Noxzema and the love of a good man. That's all that. I've been doing it it seems like for so long, but what it feels like, and it feels comfortable to say 500 years. So stick with it.
Okay, we'll stick with it. So I guess to get us started, you mentioned the idea that you've worked with plenty of companies outside of the industry as well as within the insurance industry. And this conversation came to light via the comment section of a post talking about the idea of insurance carriers specifically, but pretty much our whole industry needing to kind of revamp and rebrand the way that other people outside looking in view the industry. So can you just get us started by talking through your viewpoint on why the insurance industry is struggling to find the right talent right now?
Yeah, so I think the better question is why is the insurance industry struggling to find fresh talent, right? The insurance industry has been around. It's one of the oldest industries that's been around for over a millennia. So, it's not going away. And we've always had a need and it's always evolved. But now insurance is at the precipice of a brand new awakening. Ever since the pandemic, people consume content completely differently. People's priorities have shifted completely differently. And the insurance industry has a real advantage because it needs the help. There's a lot of people on the search for a job, but there's a lack of innovation that's happening. And you talk about it all the time about how innovation needs to be the driver for a lot of different insurance agencies just to take on technology. I think at a point we do take on that technology know-how, but then it just kind of stops there. I think the conversation we were having about insurance industry as a brand in general is that most people don't realize that your corporate brand is your employee brand. It's kind of one and the same thing. And then there's very specific verticals on how to attract the right talent to come into your job. It doesn't matter if you're, commercial lines, private mom and pop, agency or an MJ or a broker, everybody has a brand. And regardless if you want it or not, it's there. So might as well make it work for you. So right now, I think the innovation is really lacking in so many different ways. And we need to probably push it through past technology and push it into operations, go into recruiting, how we innovate working with each other. The insurance industry has a huge opportunity.
So I guess then we have the opportunity. I'm all for it. I'm with you here. Obviously, anybody who knows me and knows what I talk about, this is one of my hills. But let's talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what's the risk if we don't figure it out? What happens if we don't change our approach?
It's coming. Regardless if you want it or not, the impact is insane. So Insurance Business Magazine.com came out with an article late last year in November saying by 2026, about 400,000 jobs are going to just kind of bow out of the insurance industry. So what do we do with that surplus of jobs? Right now, the impact is going to be that if you can't find the fresh talent to kind of come in or the skilled talent to kind of come in, you're going to push all that work onto your other employees. And this is going to be a macro problem where we're not going to see it up front. We're going to see it maybe after a year or two where your employees are just get really tired because they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're underappreciated. So eventually you're going to start seeing, in my prediction, what I've already started seeing now with the tech industry is that you're going to start to see a churn of employees. Employees are going to come into an industry that's not really innovative in technology. And you're going to have the Gen Zs and the younger millennials, and even me, I'm an older millennial. I want efficiency and I want I want technology to make my job easier. Um, and if these people who are coming into these jobs are going to take that extra 400,000 jobs that are there, and your job is not efficient, it's not innovative, it's not cutting edge, and your brand isn't doing the job to kind of keep them there, your benefits are kind of like, you're just going to see people coming in. You're going to spend a lot of time on money, or I guess a lot of money and time on recruiting, a lot of time on training, a lot of time on getting them onboarded. And then after maybe like 4 months, they're going to dip out. It's happening right now in tech, especially after all these tech layoffs. The insurance industry is not, absolved of this as well. So eventually you're going to see high turnover, and it's going to hit the bottom line of these small mom and pops. So eventually, I predict if these small mom and pops or these carriers or the MGAs or the brokers don't get their shit together, eventually you're going to see bottom lines getting hurt. And then maybe smaller agencies are going to get gobbled up by bigger agencies, which doesn't create competition in the market. So it's a huge problem, especially for commercial insurance lines. It's a big problem. We need to work on it. Like now.
So now I want to talk about, how do we work on it? And what does it look like for a company to focus back on that idea that I brought up at the beginning of like employer branding? What are the steps that companies can be taking now to kind of address this issue?
Literally, I like to think of it holistically as a macro and a micro. So on the macro, understanding that your company has a brand, regardless if you want it or not. So reach out to professionals like yourself or professionals like me who work in innovation and branding, marketing, sales, to develop an actual audience and develop a voice for your brand. That corporate brand is going to be gold for you in the future. That's the macro. The micro right now is like sales 101. If you can have your customers advocate for your business, that's just gold, right? So for the micro, right now, treat your current employees like gold. The more you treat your employees like gold, they're just going to do the work for you. They're going to go onto LinkedIn, and they're going to go onto Instagram, and they're going to start voicing out like how amazing your company is and why anybody would be lucky to work for you. That's just like low hanging fruit. But also with the macro in the micro is to reach out to professionals who understand what it really means to put on an actual employee brand strategy into your digital marketing efforts, your just branding efforts, your technology efforts. Like there's so many different ways that this can go, and there's not one way to fit, but there's a lot of things that we can do right now. Like literally just treat your employees amazingly and encourage them to speak on your behalf. Talk to a professional about how we can start integrating some employee brand initiatives into your social media plan, or if you don't have a social media plan, get a social media plan. Like reach out to professionals. We're here for a reason. We want to help, but we also have bills to pay. So kind of like in the same time, go onto blogs, reach out to professionals on TikTok. TikTok is the new area where people are consuming content, and it's easier for people to reach out to people quicker and faster. And just reach out to create a network within yourself or a community around you to understand what works for this agency could work for you, and just don't be afraid to innovate, and don't be afraid to experiment and track your success. And if that doesn't work, just then reach out to you or reach out to me, and we'll figure it out together.
Well, I think you just hit on something that I think is really interesting, is this idea of like stepping outside of the tools that we've always used and really being innovative with the way that we're approaching bringing talent into the company. I think so many organizations are so stuck on this idea of like, what is professional? How do we do this? What does that look like? And they're missing out on opportunities because they're not thinking outside of the box, and they're doing what they've always done or what everybody else is doing, as opposed to setting themselves apart the same way that you would want your employees to do if they came into your organization, to think innovatively and like accomplish bigger and better goals than what you've been able to with the tools that you had at your disposal in the past. So
Yeah.
I love that thought process.
Yeah. I mean, that's insurance in general. Like, do you think about it? Like insurance is meant to play on the safe side. So it makes sense that insurance will want to play on the safe side. But now is the time to innovate. Now is the time to not play it so safe, because if we continue going down this road, we're gonna start seeing this impact that we're talking about. People gobbling up smaller agencies and not having that competition is really going to start hurting your consumers It's going to hurt your bottom line sooner or later. You may not think that it's attached, but it's attached.
100%. Well, thank you so much for joining me for the conversation. And for everybody watching, please make sure that you give Danny a follow if you're not already on LinkedIn, and reach out to either one of us if you've got any questions. But thank you again, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.